You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman. I chair the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission for Branford, Connecticut. It is now 7:03 on November 4th, 2021. We are in a virtual meeting. Let's see. Rules of the road. Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking so that we can have good fidelity on the call. We have a number of items to go through. The agenda is as of November 3rd, 2021. It was revised. Materials for the meeting this evening are in the Dropbox in case you don't have a copy in front of you. Screen sharing will be available during the meeting in the event that you don't have meeting material. Let's see. If in fact there is an opportunity for comment, you can use the raise your hand feature of the Zoom platform in order to get attention. Abby, if you could monitor that as well as Jamie to make sure I don't miss a comment. Let's see, we'll do a roll call of the commission and then staff. Please indicate either here or present or something. Peter Basserman here.
Commissioner Krause here. Commissioner Begemon here.
Commissioner Boda here.
Commissioner Krause. Unmute.
Oh, sorry. I already said I was here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed it.
That's okay.
Do we get everybody? Okay.
It's not appear that there's any other commissioners present.
Yeah, I didn't see
Jamie
any.
Frederick and the wetland agent.
Abby.
Oh, sorry, Abby York, Inland Wetland Associate, present.
Thank you. All right, we have 2 minutes for approval. First one, October 14th, regular meeting minutes. They were mailed out. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 14, 2021.
I'll make a motion to second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye, Commissioner.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. Next up is the November 3rd site walk minutes. I don't think they were mailed out, but they are in the Dropbox. However, they may not be available easily to review. So can you post there, Jamie? I'll make a motion to approve the site walk minutes of November 3rd.
Commissioner Begemon, second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You.
One abstention. Commissioner Boda.
Say that one more time.
Commissioner Boda abstained.
Oh, okay. You get that, Abby?
Commissioner Krause abstain. I was not on the sidewalk.
Applications for receipt. Inland Wetland 21-1005, 367, 373, 375, 377, and 383 East Main. The addition of another building and associated drainage and improvements to an approved Inland Wetland 200401 mixed-use development. A discussion of the fees. Can you provide a little background on this for Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Just to let everyone know, Melissa Papatones has joined the meeting. So based on the number of commissioners present, she should be seated. So this was briefly kind of brought to the commission's attention at the last meeting. The question was whether it was a permit modification or a new permit. I did talk briefly with town council about it, and based on the fact that it extends onto additional property, increases the footprint of the overall activity and modifies the drainage system, it was recommended that the commission, particularly given the fact the commission doesn't really define what constitutes a modification in the regulations, that it be a new permit. So a new permit application has been submitted, and I did do a little bit of discussion with the applicant today regarding the fee. And if there's any additional questions, we can go over that, but otherwise we can hand it over to the applicant.
Let's see, who is here for the applicant?
This is David Sacco. I'm a civil engineer with TPA Design Group in New Haven, and I'm here representing the developer. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and give a brief presentation.
We're happy to hear from you.
Okay, can everyone see my screen at this point?
Yep.
Okay. So the proposal before you is for an expansion of the 375 East Main Street mixed-use development onto an adjoining piece of property at 383 East Main Street. This rendered view shows the originally approved development on the southerly portion of the property. The 383 lot abuts it to the north and runs up to Route 1. What is being proposed is one additional building. It will be 44 residential units and associated parking. There's 42 garage spaces under the building and 14 exterior spaces. It will not have another access point to Route 1. It will use the same primary entrance to Route 1 as being established for the main development. Just so you have an idea of where things stand, Building A, which is parallel to Route 1, is substantially well along. Building B behind it is out of the ground and being framed up, and they are doing site preparation to get ready for Building E, which is in this location. The existing remainder of the Days Inn is still present along the wetlands on the southerly side of the lot. There's not going to be demolition of that until they get a little bit farther along to minimize the amount of area that is open and disturbed at any one point in time. So the reason that we're here before you, this is an expansion of the project. It does represent an additional disturbance of roughly 1.16 acres. The majority of it is on the 383 East Main Street lot, with a small portion on the 375 East Main Street lot to facilitate the driveway connection and a portion of the building. There's no plan to further develop the site. The northerly portion is very steep, very rocky. It's characterized by very shallow ledge and bedrock throughout the property. So the feasibility of a roadway connection onto Route 1 and the extensive amount of rock removal that would have to be done in order to do any further development really preclude anything else. It would take absolutely heroic measures and high costs to do much more with the property. So this is pretty much where the developer expects to go with the project, and hopefully you won't see me back here again about this anytime soon. One other minor matter that I want to point out that we are here before you about, as part of the review process with the DOT to obtain a permit from the Office of State Transportation Administration and the local district, they are requiring us to install a right-of-way fence along the southerly limit of the property. They had originally asked that it be on the property line. We pointed out that that would push it directly through the heart of the wetlands. They have agreed that it can go along the limit of disturbance along the southerly portion of the lot, and it will not represent an additional disturbance activity because it will be installed within the limit of the previously approved limit of clearing and disturbance to the site. Survey.
Mr. Sacco, can you say that again about what is it that the DOT wants? They want to change their right of way?
No, they don't. There's typically along a highway, there's usually a fence along their property line, essentially along their right of way line. There was never a fence installed along this right of way line as part of the I-95 construction. They're asking us to take care of that now. So the compromise we've agreed to is that the fence will be along the limit of disturbance on the applicant's property rather than where it typically would be, which is directly on the property line, because in this case, that would represent encroachment into the wetland and additional disturbance. We're trying to avoid that. And luckily they decided that they agreed with us that our approach is acceptable to them.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I just also want to point out that I believe that there are a couple of gates proposed so that the maintenance of the stormwater outlet structure can be maintained properly.
That's correct. What we're proposing, there's going to be a gate right at the outlet, the level spreader, the energy dissipator for the stormwater system so that they can have access to that to clean it out. The fence will wrap around the energy dissipator instead of cutting across it, so it doesn't have trash or brush or anything else and cause problems. The other gate is just off the screen. It's near the area where we'll be removing an existing pipe discharge into the wetlands and doing a wetland restoration so that they'll have access to the wetlands for maintenance, but also to see to that area until it's well established.
Mr. Sacco, building F. What is that hashed area to the left of the building F? The top one.
This area up here.
Right.
That's exposed ledge. That's an extensive area of exposed ledge identified by the surveyor. Similarly, there's an area behind building E as well. It's a very rocky area. We're not proposing to do any disturbance in that area.
Mr. Sacco, Melissa Papantonis, Commissioner. The property where you're talking about the fence, the right-of-way, is that part of this lot? Who's the owner of the property with the right-of-way?
The right-of-way is the Interstate 95 right-of-way.
I understand, but the right-of-way runs over property that belongs to someone else, as I understand it.
The fence will be built on property of the developer. There are two entities. One's called Metro 375 LLC. The other is Metro 383 LLC. They're under common ownership. So the fence that will be constructed along the right-of-way is being constructed on land of the developer and under his control.
Okay.
So
thank you.
That was the compromise to allow us to build it without having an encroachment into the wetland. It seemed unnecessary.
Commissioner Basserman, the stormwater from building F is treated how?
That's the next topic for discussion. What we're proposing to do, because the area of building F is largely underlain by shallow rock. It's a very difficult area to do any kind of stormwater infiltration. We are proposing one small rain garden. It's essentially going to capture runoff from really the lawn and the hardscape immediately in front of the building. It provides the water quality volume, so it will do treatment, a little bit of peak attenuation before the water overflows down the hill. For the most part, the runoff from the roof, runoff from behind the building, and runoff from the parking area is going to be connected into the same stormwater management system that's being built in support of the remainder of the development. The development has two proposed retention systems. The first is out in front of Building A along Route 1. The second was proposed for right in front of Building C at the southerly portion of the site. What we're proposing to do is the stormwater runoff is going to connect into the system that was proposed for the original development, and we're going to be significantly expanding the size of the retention that was being provided in this area. We were providing 120 chambers. We are adding another 150 chambers for a total of 270. They'll all be interconnected so that the water level will be maintained consistent within all three. The outlet control structure will be moved downstream of all of the systems. The reason that we're proposing to do this is because this is an area where there's soil. This is an area where we know we can successfully put water into the ground and effectively attenuate runoff, get some groundwater recharge, and accomplish the goals of mimicking pre-development conditions in terms of storm runoff, where it really wasn't feasible to do that in closer proximity to Building F, simply because we would be removing rock, essentially creating a bathtub. Very little opportunity for infiltration. Essentially, it would have to overflow along the rock surface and find its way into some place where the soil layer was thick enough to allow for some infiltration. So that's why what we're proposing, and really the main reason that we're here before you for this presentation, what we're proposing is to put the stormwater into an area where it makes sense, an area where it realistically can be infiltrated. It can have the proper function in terms of the stormwater, and maintain minimal impact on the receiving water and the surrounding area.
This Commissioner Basserman, does that larger number of galleys, I guess, allow you to meet the 1 inch, first 1 inch of rainwater regulation?
Yes, it does. For the entire development, the water quality volume that we calculated is 20,715 cubic feet. With the additional retention volume, we would be providing a total of 24,504 cubic feet of retention. There is additional storage beyond that. There's 12,000 cubic feet of detention where the water level rises and it's beginning to overflow out the outlet. But there's, in peaks in a severe storm, there will still be further attenuation because of the surplus volume. But we're increasing the amount of retention from the original proposal by 4,400 cubic feet, and more than accomplishing what is required under the regulations.
Commissioner Basserman, just to follow up to that, for the 24,000 et cetera cubic feet of retention, was that a 100-year storm or something less than that?
That's based on the water quality volume, which is independent of the storm. It's essentially that you calculate that based on the runoff from 1 inch of rainfall hitting the site. But in terms of the modeling of the stormwater system, it has been modeled up to the 100-year storm to ensure that it's functional and that we're not we are generating less peak runoff at every storm level than under the conditions that prevailed during the days in occupancy of the site. And in fact, at all but one storm level, we are maintaining, even having added building F, we are staying within roughly the same performance as we had for the approved development with one fewer building.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that quickly, I just wanted to point out this is the existing pattern of where water goes, not only from the original development, but from the new lot. Things get a little bit more complicated because now the 383 lot, a portion of it has been draining down into the wetland anyway. A small portion of it in the center is draining down to the car wash lot. It enters the storm drainage system there and onto Route 1. And then the northerly portion of the site drains directly to East Main Street, enters the stormwater system. It all ends up flowing to the Branford River through this stormwater discharge from Route 1. This is the breakdown of the proposed areas. Essentially, a slightly smaller area is going to the car wash, so we have less runoff reaching the car wash lot. The area that's going to Route 1 is nearly identical. There's very little change there. A small additional area where the north end of building F and the turning area is being added and flowing south into the storm drainage system through the retention area and into the wetland south of the site. That then overflows back into Route 1 and again toward the Branford River. But essentially, we're maintaining roughly speaking, we're maintaining the breakout of what goes where. What is currently going north continues to go north. What's currently getting to Route 1 more or less is still getting there. By expanding the retention, we're attenuating the peak runoff to the wetlands, but we're still substantially maintaining flow to the wetland in support of the wetland function. We're not substantially diminishing that as a result of what we're proposing to do with stormwater management.
Commissioner Bascom, any other questions from Mr. Sacco? As of this is received this evening, yes, received this evening, not actionable.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I just want to mention that the fee was based off of the additional area of disturbance beyond what was originally approved in the first application. So that the commission understands that that's how it's been calculated. So it doesn't include the total area of all of the new activity. However, the area of new activity that is not included is an area that's already had a fee paid to review disturbance with previously. And all of the new area of disturbance associated with the project is beyond the 100-foot upland review area. So it seemed like a reasonable way to process the fee. However, it might be a slight deviation from the truest interpretation of the regulations. I just wanted to see if the commission had any feedback on that.
Melissa Papantonis, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
It sounds like you were saying that. So if I understand correctly, you're just the fee was calculated so as not to essentially double dip on the same property, but to apply the fee in a way that meets the purpose of the fee and the spirit of it without charging them for the same development on the same land twice.
I think that's a fair way of surmising what I was trying to say.
That makes sense.
This is David Sacco again. Just so you understand, the area for the fee calculation is based on this additional disturbed area right here around building F. It's roughly 50,500 square feet. So the fee previously paid was based on the disturbance throughout the remainder of the site, and the basis for this is now this disturbed area extending across both lots, but predominantly on the 383 lot.
Commissioner Papantonis, we had gotten an opinion or we had asked for an opinion from Corporation Counsel on this, town council, right?
We asked for an opinion on whether it should be a new application or a modification of the previous application. And the recommendation was that it should be a new application. Okay. So that again ties into kind of the awkwardness of the fee assessment.
Okay.
I guess this is Commissioner Bassman. I'm missing something. What is the awkwardness if that area was not included in the original fee because it wasn't included in the disturbance?
I guess
why is there?
The awkwardness is so what I'm getting at is essentially the area that you're looking at that is the bolder colors. That's the area the fee was based off of, but that stormwater ties in through the previously approved development with the new infiltrators under the southern building along the 95 corridor. So that area that has previously been approved for disturbance, an additional fee was not charged again for that area. So that's the area that is gray, if you will.
Thank you.
And so just can I ask a quick question about that, just for, I guess, uniformity's sake? This is Commissioner Boda. Just so, Jamie, then is it your opinion that the change to the retention system really doesn't have any bearing, like the fact that they're adding in more capacity will not impact the office, like your work in the office to monitor this project?
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I certainly think that the modification to the stormwater system is something that we're going to be looking at as part of this application. It's the activity that is within the 100-foot review area. However, I think that the fee that we've calculated, which is $1,360, is sufficient to cover the cost of town staff review of the application.
Right. So Commissioner Boda, so that what we've already charged for that portion is sufficient, even though there's a modification to the area that's already been approved.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I would argue what the commission is looking at essentially is how the stormwater being conveyed from the new development impacts the wetland located to the south of the development. So it really is ultimately the stormwater system and review that there's proper erosion controls to protect the wetlands, and then the stormwater system for longevity to mitigate impacts to the wetlands that the commission would be reviewing.
Yeah, this is Commissioner, but I was just thinking, I just wanted to further clarify the thinking behind the rationale for the total fee. So I think we're in agreement. I just wanted to think out loud for other commissioners or for anyone in the public, or for future documentation, why in this case we would charge what we would charge as opposed to something different.
Absolutely. That's why I brought it up myself, because I do think it is a unique situation, and that the commission should strive to try and apply a fair fee given the scenario. But also go with the regulations.
This is David Sacco. Just to clarify something also, in essence, this doesn't represent a second disturbance in the area because work on Building C, and in fact, the demolition of the Days Inn has not started. So that rather than having accomplished something that then has to be disrupted and amended during the construction period, assuming we get all the approvals and we can move forward with understanding that Building F will eventually be part of this development, there will only be one disturbance in this area. There will only be one set of activities that takes place in support of the original development plus the Building F. So we're trying to make this work out as efficiently and with the least possible impact as we move forward.
Commissioner Bassman, sounds reasonable, and it should not be the Commission's practice to charge twice for the same activity. And I would say that that's our normal course of action. So, Jamie, you would agree that this is not requiring a special vote?
Correct.
Any other comments from the Commission? Thank you, Mr. Sacco. We'll see you, I guess, in December.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Next up, Inland Wetland 211101, 3-7 Rockland Park, restoration of a wetland area and pond, including the removal of invasive species and the planting of native plants.
This is Commissioner Begemon. Before I get started, I'm recusing myself. And if I can ask Suzanne, if you can text me when we're done with this section. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see, do we have somebody for the applicant on the call this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ing Ho. I spoke in front of the commission last month regarding for guidance around this application. We have submitted an application as of Tuesday this week for the restoration of 3-7 Rockland Park, which contains currently a pond that has been overgrown with invasives, particularly Phragmites or Phragmites. Basically, this parcel of land was recently transferred to my ownership, and but the neighborhood has been wanting to restore this for quite some time. And so the transfer of the property to me was a first step in being able to actually go forward with putting forward a permit application in order to be able to do this restoration. This area is about almost 3/4 of an acre. The pond itself is probably about half an acre, and there's also a wooded area. The entire area has not been well maintained over these last several years. There's a sewer line that has run underneath that pond, and the fill basically allowed a lot of invasives to build up or to grow in that space. And so our goal right now as a larger restoration project as a neighborhood is to basically to remove all of the invasives and to also basically try and plant in some native plants. We've submitted in our application the fact that we will be working with all habitats to do mechanical as well as chemical removal of the Phragmites, mugwort, and Japanese knotweed, which are the predominant species, invasive species in that area, in addition to a number of other invasives. We've also demarcated out where the other invasive plants are. And then our hope is to basically plant a number of natives that include everything from winterberry to and also Joe Pye weed and a number of other native plants. We have also sketched out where we would like to put some of those plants. We have also had the benefit of the help of Matt Davison from Davison Environmental, who's on the call tonight, help us with the original sort of mapping of the delineation of the wetlands. And we have also asked for his help in basically helping us think through the plantings, including the density and the numbers that are we will be planting in those various areas. You will see in the application that we've tried to zone it out based on the soils and the light conditions to the best of our knowledge, but we do hope to provide a little bit more refinement in this timeframe. We have worked directly with Jamie, and with her guidance, we are also submitting a full-size site map from the original survey, which was done in 2019. And we hope that with these upcoming sort of documents, that the commission will look favorably upon our application. I don't know if Matt would like to say a few words about his report of the area.
Sure. Thank you. That was a good overview. So as Ying had mentioned, I was engaged originally back in March of this year to do the initial delineation of the property with the intent of the applicant and some of the other neighbors that are knowledgeable in this type of area develop a restoration plan. I was re-engaged recently, and frankly, I haven't had a whole lot of time to review the plan they've developed. I've done a cursory review, and certainly it looks good from a high level. They've engaged, as was mentioned, All Habitat Services to do the invasives removal. I think the overall plan is to enhance the wetland functions associated with this system, and actually, in this particular case, enhance some wetland values. Things like aesthetics and recreation. I think it's an area that's intended to be used by the neighbors, and there's some other motivation in addition to enhancing the wetland functions. I think it's a valuable wetland system given its location in the landscape. It's I haven't done a formal Army Corps functions and values assessment, but without doing so, I would certainly say that water quality functions are highlighted here. It's a low gradient wetland. It has a constricted outlet. It's densely vegetated with emergent vegetation. It's in an area that's developed and adjacent to Long Island Sound. So for those reasons, certainly with the restoration, in addition to some of the wildlife functions that would be enhanced, I would certainly look to try to enhance some of the water quality functions. Again, I intend to get into the plan with them over the course of the next month. I think there was also a request from staff that the wetland boundary be extended. So I intend to address some of these open items. I did notice when I was out there in the initial delineation that there is some iron precipitate up in the upper end of the wetland, which I suspect is from the initial sewer line installation. And I see that often when you have upland fill introduced to an area where you have some surface or groundwater interaction with that upland soil. It happens to be high in iron content, and you can see the iron precipitate into the wetland when it enters it. But one of the things I had talked really early on with the ladies about is doing some emergent plantings up at the upper end of the wetland where the water sort of enters the system. It can be done in the form of wetland plugs and things. And I think strategically located plantings would dramatically increase the water quality functions associated with this system. So again, I apologize that I'm not more prepared coming into this, but I intend to use the next couple of weeks to sort of go through the plan in detail with the ladies and fine tune it. But again, I think it's a good plan to start with. They've engaged the right people. They're certainly knowledgeable. And I don't think it has far to go.
Commissioner Baskerman, Mr. Davison, where does the outlet go? Does it directly into the sound, or is there an intermediary involved?
I don't know that I'm assuming it goes right into the sound because the pipe is literally right along the roadway there, and then the sound is across the street. So I haven't identified a direct connection, but I assume that it's going into there. The outlet is constricted. It's undersized, so the water pond's behind it, but it does seem to function. And I would suspect goes into the sound, right into the sound.
Okay. Sounds like this.
Commissioner Boda, this is really, I guess, can you talk a little bit about the iron precipitate? You said that, can you just talk a little bit more about, you said the some of the plantings in particular may help that? Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, you see, probably everyone here in the commission has seen this phenomenon. It just looks like sort of a rust color material that you can see in wetlands. And I often see it in wetlands where there has been some recent disturbance nearby. And I would suspect it's from I believe it was a sewer line that was put through the area. And essentially what it is just iron that is interacts with the ground and surface water. And then when it's released back into the wetland and encounters oxygen, it oxidizes. It indicates that there's some upland fill that was introduced to an area that has ground and surface water interaction where there wasn't that interaction before. And I only noticed it in the upper tip there on the bottom near wetland flag 1 is where I noticed it coming in. And so during my initial site inspection, I had talked to Shirley at the time about doing some even like wetland plug plantings, and they already have a lot of plantings proposed. I honestly think it's more at this point of just sort of making sure the configuration of the plantings is done in a way that maximizes this type of thing. But I think you can do some plug plantings up on that end and get some dense emergent growth as that water enters into the wetland. And then you're sort of taking advantage of the fact that it's entering in at the upper end of the wetland, and then it has a longer retention time. It's going to interact with the vegetation longer. And emergent plantings, any vegetation like that, functions to attenuate pollutants, filters them, the plants attenuate them themselves. So you're sort of taking advantage of the natural biological process to essentially clean the water that's entering into the wetland. And then by the time it gets to the opposite end, you have cleaner water than what entered it.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So just to touch base on some of the things that I've kind of discussed with the applicant. One is the fact that the wetland is only delineated on the eastern extent of the wetland. There is a bit of a steep slope on the western side, but I wasn't sure if the commission would want that delineation to extend since they are proposing, I'm going to scroll to a different page right now, activity in that area. So before I move on, these are a couple pictures that were in the soil scientist report showing the wetland site conditions, including areas with standing water and some of the phragmites and other invasive species on site that they're looking to address. This is the list of plantings that have been provided, and I had suggested that it would probably be good to discuss with the soil scientist to just help confirm that the plantings being proposed are ideal for the areas being proposed, and also get some more information on density of plantings in the areas to be impacted. So this first map here is showing some of the areas where they have invasive species that they would like to address. And you can see it does extend in some spots along the western side of the property. And then the second,
do we normally require delineation when work is going to be conducted, that close to the wetland?
Yeah, so Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So in addition to confirming the extent of the wetland along the west side of the property would be the question of whether or not the wetland delineation needs to be added to the survey. So the areas highlighted on the survey right now have been highlighted by the applicants as estimated areas of where the invasive species are and the areas that would need to be replanted based on that invasive removal. So I guess the question there is, do they need a more formal plan regarding the spatial aspect of what it is that they're proposing to do, or is the information provided sufficient for the commission given the type of activity they're proposing to do? So the other question here is that the fee is based off of the area disturbance in a wetland and the total area disturbance overall. So not having actual areas does make it difficult to measure, to calculate that fee. However, they have also requested a fee reduction, and the commission has had a past practice of reducing the fee on applications like this based on the environmental benefit of the application. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but they're all interrelated topics.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I think this is, the kind of project we love to see. taking place. Love the initiative that's behind it, the professionalism in which it's being reviewed. And so, to the extent that there's an opportunity to do this at some kind of reduced cost or fee, I think we should seriously consider it. And whether that's you take the delineation, you figure out the total area disturbance, and then you base your fee discount or fee reduction on that total, or whether you say close enough on the delineation on the western side and go forward with a different fee. I'm not sure what the prudent approach is, but the bottom line is there ought to be some benefit for this kind of project as opposed to a commercial project. That's one man's opinion.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. So at the end of the day, the beneficiaries, other than all the people in the town, because we're preserving a wetland, obviously, and restoring it, is just the neighborhood. It's isn't this the type of project the land trust usually takes on?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. If it was a land trust property, it would be the kind of activity that the land trust might be looking to do on a property to restore it. But as it's privately owned, the land trust would not do this type of activity on this property.
I'm sorry, Matt Davison again, and as a resident of an adjacent shoreline town, I live in Guilford and I live near the Sound and enjoy the Sound. I would also be willing to offer up some oversight, not an intensive amount of effort, but at no charge to the applicant. I would offer up some oversight of at least the initial implementation, even a meeting with like Owl Habitat and those kind of things at the onset of the project, just to make sure it's going in the right direction.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, not to try and take advantage of that statement, but it does lead into one other thought that I had. And the commission generally has had a past practice of reducing projects that are purely conservation-based activities down to the $60 deep fee. Once they're satisfied with the information being submitted that there is an intent and a designed plan to create what will ultimately be an environmental improvement. And part of that usually does include some level of monitoring and reporting back on progress, just to make sure that the project is staying on task. So I don't know if that's something the commission would want to see as part of the application, but if so, we should inform the applicant, I think, at this time so that they can address that for the December meeting.
This is Commissioner Bassett, but I think what you're saying is for projects that are even conservation-based, we have a monitoring period that we look to be part of the project, and I would see this would be no different.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. In the past, the commission has taken the 5-year monitoring requirement for wetland mitigation and kind of applied that to these types of projects. Sometimes it's reduced down to 3 years. I think given the scope and the size of this project, the 5 years would be appropriate, especially since there's parts of it that aren't going to start in year one.
This Commissioner Bassman, I guess if it was a fee reduction only, in my mind, you'd wait to December and see that Mr. Davison has had an opportunity to delve into the project and specifically look at the plantings and the density of the plantings, et cetera, and then consider a fee reduction. But I think the issue of the delineation we're facing now, we can't wait till December for that. Am I correct on that, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, if we're going to talk about a fee in December, we either have to have a delineation or not, and right. We need to make that decision tonight, not in December.
Correct.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I want to speak to that just for a moment, because I think that, again, when we're looking at regulated activities that have a direct impact to the wetland that forecloses, if we look at the state statute and the preamble of the purpose purpose of the Connecticut general statutes around protecting inland wetlands and watercourses is all about foreclosing future benefit, and so we have the function of the delineation is to ensure that we're not losing even by small cuts here and there. And this particular application, that's not what's happening. And so when I look at the section 3.1 in our own regulations, it talks about maintaining current, having a current map of the wetlands in the town, but it talks about the varieties of in ways we can keep track of that, including aerial photography, resource mapping. It doesn't necessarily require something like an A2 survey. And I think that that's our past practice for something that is going to have direct impacts to the wetlands in causing deleterious effects. So I don't know that we need that kind of survey. I think that the data that's readily available is sufficient for these purposes. So anyway, that's my perspective on the citing of the delineation of the wetland.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, just to continue off of that, section 7.7 I4 does require an A2 survey with the wetland delineation. However, the commission has certainly had a past practice of waiving that for smaller applications and or also in some other conservation-based applications. I know that GIS maps and kind of highlighting areas have been acceptable in the past. So I don't think it's out of place. I just wanted to point out that there is another section in our regulations that does apply.
And Jamie, we have a hand raised. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah. Shirley, if you have a comment.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to answer that question about who will it benefit? Yes, it will benefit humans and that it will be educational and they can learn that you can help wildlife and nature by restoring habitat. But more importantly, it's going to help wildlife because recently the World Wildlife Fund reported the planet has lost 70% of its wildlife in the last 50 years, all human caused. So we have to do wherever we can in suburbia to help them. So that's the main goal, I think, for me is the wildlife. And finally, I want to thank Matt Davison for his incredible, fabulous expertise. Thank you.
Duly noted.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I just want to comment that as part of our task, we need to encourage this type of activity and not make it cost prohibitive for individuals to take on these restoration projects. So that's one woman's opinion, I guess.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. Your opinion is in the regulations, so it's a good one. So it's section 19.7. It does allow for a waiver or reduction of the application fee. And one of the reasons is the activity applied for would clearly result in a substantial public benefit to the environment or to the public health and safety, and that the applicant would be reasonably deterred from initiating the activity solely or primarily as a result of the amount of the application fee.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, what would you be comfortable in other than an A2 survey for the delineation of the western portion of this project?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. If I'll pull up the wetland sketch again, and I don't know, maybe the soil scientist has the ability to kind of pick up with a GPS an approximate location of the wetland line, and or staff could possibly go out and try and pick up some of the flags that are placed in the field. But let me see, screen share. So without requiring the surveyor to go out to the site and pick up the wetland flags, I would be envisioning something kind of like this, just continuing along the western side of the property, unless Matt Davison has anything additional to add to that.
No, the wetland boundary is very obvious. And on the side that I didn't delineate it, it's essentially a rock outcropping. It would be tough to delineate that. I can try. I might have to access it from the wetland itself with waders, but the boundary around the entire wetland system is very obvious. I would also add that prior to any work, I will reflag it and flag it well so that everyone knows exactly where the wetland boundary is.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, if we took that boundary that Mr. Davis had just talked about as the other side, do you have all the information then that you would need to calculate the fee and therefore the reduction that might result from that fee?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. If the commission is comfortable, I can use the sketches provided by the applicant to calculate areas of disturbance. They did provide some calculations themselves. I've not gone through and checked them, but I could use an overlay of these two plans to calculate the area of disturbance. It just won't be, and then also utilize the wetland delineation to try and estimate how much fits in the wetland area.
I'll offer this up. If the commission won't require a formal map, I have a high quality handheld GPS that's sub-meter. I can collect the points around the wetland. I can provide it to our GIS staff and have them calculate the exact wetland area. Again, if I have to make a map, it gets a little bit, I don't know how much I want to volunteer, but if that would help you guys out, I can give you the area of the wetland. That would be a fairly accurate representation of that area. And then from that, you could subtract it from the overall property.
Sounds like a plan.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that would be helpful.
This Commissioner Papantonis, that sounds like a pretty reasonable solution to me.
Anything else on this project?
Shirley, do you have another comment or?
No, my hand's still up there for some reason.
Right, let's see if I can lower it for you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? And again, Mr. Davison, thank you for the work that you've already put in and what you've volunteered to do. It's certainly heartwarming to see that kind of participation.
Just want to thank the commission very much for the conversation and for the consideration.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Finally, for applications for receipt, Inlet Wetland 211102, 140 to 240 Austin Ryer Lane, DO 503-001C, the repair and replacement of a drainage outlet.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This application was submitted in response to a notice of violation that was issued due to some corrections that needed to be made to a drainage system. The application came in late yesterday afternoon, so I've not had a lot of time to look at it yet, but the applicant is present, so I will hand it over to them to present the initial presentation.
Good evening, Pete Parent, professional engineer with CHA, representing the applicant. I'm going to share my screen and we'll talk through the plan quickly. So as we discussed last month on a conceptual basis, the previous drainage system discharges via a catch basin in the corner of the parking lot here, had one drop manhole on this steep slope, and then outletted kind of midpoint on a reasonably steep slope, and over time has created this scoured area and a downstream channel, and is now failing. Multiple sections of pipe and a manhole have since collapsed into this scour area. So the intent of the repair is to bring the outlet down to a more level area and create a Connecticut DOT grade scour hole, and then provide a series of stepped manholes to traverse this steep slope, and then provide a 90-degree bend at the end with some flatter pipes to reduce velocities down to acceptable levels so we don't get any more erosion, and then restore the whole area, remove this existing drainage system, and restabilize the slope. You can see in profile here, it's very steep. We're holding the pipes at a maximum slope of 8%, providing drop manholes. We have sumps in the manholes to further provide some reduction in velocity. And then just some standard details, catch basin manholes, the scour hole itself, and then notes regarding construction sequence, erosion controls required, and that sort of thing. It's reasonably straightforward. It's just a kind of a repair of an existing drainage system. If the commission has any questions, I'm happy to answer anything I can.
Commissioner Basserman, when would you look to do this activity?
So, obviously it's something that needs to be repaired. So it would be ideal, I think, to get this done over the winter when we're not going to be anticipating any rain events that would make it more difficult to install this drainage system. Other than that, I think you probably want to just kind of stabilize it for the spring and then do it in the summer. But I think that's going to be dependent on how we get approvals and the funding end of things from the homeowners association.
Jamie Frederick and Lynn Laney, Jen, are you going to be able to access the site to do the work from this edge of the parking lot, or are you going to have to?
Yeah, so we've kind of walked this through with a couple of the contractors that we work with on a regular basis. And, it's certainly going to be a challenge, but they feel like rather than creating a bunch of additional disturbance, cutting a road in, from the side, just kind of working their way down the slope with excavators and heavy equipment is probably going to be the best way to do this, even though it's going to require moving material twice to kind of step it down the hill. It's going to be the way to do this without disturbing a large area, because there's really no opportunity. I know when we walked the site, we kind of discussed that there's that access road that runs this way over the sewer easement, but we kind of looked at what it would take to cut a reasonable road in here where you could kind of drive on the road, trucks up and down, and it became a large area of disturbance. It just didn't seem worthwhile.
This Commissioner Basserman, I'm curious on that 90-degree turn. Is that for design to reduce velocity?
Yes.
Gotcha. As opposed to a gentler turn?
Right. So, we're kind of forcing the water to make that turn at a flat angle. So both of those pipes are set at 1%. So they've got less pitch than the rest of the system. And then we're forcing the water to take a hard turn. So it helps slow it down as much as we can before we get out to that scour hole.
Any other questions for the commission?
One comment I have is that when this was before the commission as a notice of violation, the question had come up whether to do a site walk, and the commission decided to wait until an application was submitted to determine that. As we discussed, it is a very challenging site to access, but if that's something the commission is interested in doing, I think it would be appropriate to schedule at this point. But however, I do also have pictures of the area available in the notice of violation file, which I can copy over into this file for the commission to review in lieu of a site walk if the commission would prefer.
And Jamie, I have a number of pictures as well that I could share with you.
Sure.
Can we, this Commissioner Basserman, can we try pictures and see if it does justice? And then if not, we'll schedule a site walk. That's a can do?
Yeah, we can start with pictures. Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Is the soil scientist present this evening as well, or no?
No, Sarah is not on this evening.
All
So
right. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say, I only briefly looked at it. I know that you did identify direct wetland impact. I'm assuming that's the activity seen here within the intermittent water course.
So actually the direct wetland impact is just a little bit of grading here where the wetland kind of pokes up in.
Okay. So you did not include the activity within the intermittent water course in that calculation?
No, we did not.
All right. I think that it should be revised to include the intermittent water course because that's considered a regulated resource.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of a catch-22 because I'm sure it exists in part because of the structure.
Right. Yeah. It only exists because
and
of
it
the
won't
outlet.
really exist once you've revised the outlet location.
Right.
Does the commission have any difference in opinion from what I stated though, before the applicant revises their calculations and submits the additional fee?
Okay, see you in December.
Okay, thank you.
Applications for review, inland wetland 210801, 175 Cherry Hill Road. It's a 11 lot subdivision. We have a fee assessment review for that application.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Just to remind the commission, the fee review is relative to whether or not this application is a subdivision application with regulated activity or subdivision application without regulated activity. Recently, the commission has been looking at subdivisions as subdivision without regulated activity. And so that's how, but the application has been submitted as a subdivision with regulated activity, which I believe is the appropriate way to go. However, I just want to make sure that we're being consistent with practice and, treating everyone uniform and fair. If the commission determines it's subdivision without regulated activity, the practice has been to make certain lots come back for individual approvals. And at that point, the fee would be reduced to $110 rather than, I believe it's about $9,000 that has been submitted at this time. So I don't know if the commission wants to have a be refreshed on the application prior to further discussion, but I just wanted to explain the process or the fee situation before we dived into everything again.
Commissioner Basserman, I think a quick review would be helpful.
Yes, sir. All right, screen share. Okay. Oh, can't do that. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James DeMeo from Giuliano Associates. Our address is located at 405 Main Street, Wallingford, Connecticut. I'm here representing BC Investment Properties, LLC. As previously discussed, this is an 11 lot subdivision. To quickly go over it, again, I don't want to dive back too deep into it if we don't really, considering we already talked about it in previous months. 11 lot subdivision, which is mainly coming in off Autumn Ridge Road, developing a new right-of-way and roadway. It's broken up into two sections just based upon grading and what fits on my plans. The first section is lots 1, 2, 3, 10, and 11. This is pretty much the highest elevation on the property. So actually the elevation will go up from Autumn Ridge. And then we have a series of catch basins and pipe network that will capture the water from the upper lots and send them over to a detention basin, which I call a northern detention basin. As the road comes down, we have the remainder of the lots. Again, the catch basin network and piping network will capture all the runoff and channel it into what I call the southern detention basin. In terms of wetlands, there are no wetlands directly on the property. However, so we have Autumn Ridge here, Cherry Hill up here on the western side of the property. We have 3 small ponds in this direction. And then there are wetlands to the west of the property, but those are a few hundred feet away. I believe at least 500 feet away from the property. Then there's additional space in between disturbances because we're not developing all the way up to the property line. As per previous comments with town staff, storm drainage was reevaluated. Perk tests were done in the areas of the detention basins, and the NOAA Atlas 14 rain data was used. And what ultimately that did was this system is now, this is the northern detention basin. At the 100-year storm elevation, the basin is holding all of that. There is an emergency spillway at 164.03. At the 100-year flood elevation or the 100-year storm elevation, it's 163.54. So we have almost half a foot before it even comes out through the emergency spillway during the 100-year storm. And for the southern detention basin, something similar. We have the high-level emergency spillway at 138.85 and the 100-year storm at 138.45. So just under half a foot, 0.4, so 4 or 5 inches below is where that elevation will be. In terms of comments from staff and commission members, I will go over them. So one of the comments from the previous meeting was addressing the first inch of rainfall and attempting to infiltrate it. We're pretty much capturing all the roof leaders are now directed into our detention basins, as well as, if feasible, the driveways as well. On this, on the southeast side of the road, these houses are set a little bit lower than the grade, so it's difficult to capture any roof or runoff in the driveways and channel them into the catch basins. However, we are channeling the roof leaders into it. So we are capturing as much as feasibly possible into our storm network and into our detention basins, which again, we are detaining and infiltrating up to the 100-year storm. Perk tests were conducted. Our detention basins were redesigned with this information. The northern detention basin had 1 inch in 50 minutes and the southern 1 inch in 60. One of the other conversations was who will maintain the detention basins post-development. What will end up happening is what's called out as open space will be owned. The property owners or the properties we will create an association with these 11 lots who will then basically maintain all this open space, the open space area on the property. So it will become their responsibility in the future. The commission may want to consider using NOAA Atlas 14 data. That has been done, and drainage has been revised. Erosion control measures need to be added to the plan, such as anti-tracking pads, erosion controls for the emergency access road. We have added anti-tracking pads at the entrance for each driveway, tops or material stockpiles for each lot. And one of the major concerns is actually the emergency access road, which this will actually be our main entrance for the construction of the project. It will disturb the least amount of residents nearby. Using Cherry Hill Road instead of Autumn Ridge, it takes it through less of a less residential neighborhood. So our anti-tracking pad is going to be installed at that entrance. We will also have water bars. One comment is it appears the water bars would shed onto the other property. That's not necessarily the case. I will make sure that the plans are revised to further indicate that the water bars will shift the water onto our property instead of shifting the water onto adjoining owners. One other concern of the commission was the snow storage location not impacting existing or the proposed stormwater system. For the most part, it's a standard town road. The right-of-way width is able to accommodate the snow throughout, on the sides without negatively impacting the storm drainage. The only area of major concern is the cul-de-sac, which we do have enough room to store above the southern detention basin. If needed, again, it shouldn't necessarily be a problem, but if needed. We had
Commissioner Basserman, what's the construction schedule like?
In terms of start to finish?
Well, yeah. Is it a phase thing? Do you do, 3 lots at a time? How does this all go down?
So the applicant and myself were just talking about this before the meeting. The roadway is going to be the first thing to be constructed, the entire road, utilities put in. That's going to be the best way to, including the detention basin, storm drainage, all that will be installed with a binder course up for the pavement. Then all the lots will just start to be developed as quickly as possible, essentially.
Just Commissioner Bassett, is this a clear cut?
So there's not as much clear cutting as I don't know if you remember from the site walk. There's not too much in the way of trees. There were some trees at the top of the property, but most of it was actually just more like a meadow and tall grass. So it's not removing too much vegetation. Again, the vegetation that's going to get removed first is going to be for the roadway and the detention basins. Then each lot is going to be handled as its own little project. So if he's able to start on lot one is going to get cut down and regraded, constructed, and move on to the next. So it's not just this whole development is not going to get clear cut all at once. It's going to be roadway, then lot by lot basis.
Is that in the, this is Commissioner Boda, is that in the construction sequence section of the site plan? That it is the roadway, the stormwater management, and that individual sites will be cleared as they are being built, that the entire site will not be removed of vegetation and graded all at once.
So I don't believe that is specifically denoted on the plans. It can be, if that is a request of the commission and town staff. That is absolutely not a problem.
Yeah, there's typically, this is Commissioner Boda again, there is typically within the documents, within the site plan itself, the construction narrative and sequence. Yeah, I'm looking at the map here. The construction narrative sequence and it includes information like the monitoring of sediment and erosion controls, the preliminary construction conversation. That is a typical sheet that's included in these plans that I don't see here. And I have a full plan set. It looks like a full plan set.
I know Jamie's staff report did denote that as part of conditions of approval, talking about the meetings, pre-construction meetings and everything like that. And that's obviously not an issue to supply.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So just to clarify, there is a sheet detailing the erosion control installation details and maintenance details. However, I do not believe that there is a construction sequence outlined in the application materials. And I do not have a draft condition of approval requiring such. However, I think if the commission felt that they were comfortable making a decision and wanted to draft that up as a condition, outlining specifically the concerns that were discussed, that would probably be something that could be done. Just want to remind the commission that this item has already been continued to this evening. If the commission needs more time, they can request that the applicant consent to an extension to the December 9th meeting. However, the application timeframe, I believe, cannot be extended past like December 15th. So this is getting to the end of the time clock.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Just for background, Mr. DeMeo, we've had some experience with multiple unit projects where because of the way the construction was done and the sequencing, we had erosion issues, stormwater management issues, et cetera, that continued to not only be a problem for staff in terms of monitoring and discussions with the construction folk, but also the adjacent properties. So we're very conscious of when we have, large projects, that the construction sequence is fundamental to how well this thing, gets done.
And that's definitely understood. And I would like to, at one point I was going to circle to your staff's letter, which in my opinion definitely encompasses that that same concern that you just emphasized to me. And I don't have, reviewing it with my client, there was no concerns because she did go on to mention weekly inspections of S&E, so of all the S&E measures. And there was no concern with that from our end. So we understand, and even just going as expensive as weekly inspections, we were okay with.
This is Commissioner Bassman again, different subject, and this is more education than anything else. We looked at the basins, and we were proud of the fact that we had another 6 inches after a 100-year storm before this thing overflowed. Is there some reason why we wouldn't dig it 2 feet deeper, to get 2 feet instead of just 6 inches?
The reason why, or my only response back to that from sitting on the other side of the table would be, where would you stop? Because, all the regulations pretty much just request that you handle up to the 100-year storm. So that's all the guidelines that we have to design to from an engineering perspective. So now if we start to go even further, that, you're now evaluating past the 100-year storm. You're now heading towards the 200, 500, 1,000-year storm, where the regulations currently only sit at 100.
I understand the regulations. It's that, every other day we're facing, whether it's locally or not, storms that far exceed what history has taught us, and we're basing those regulations on history. So thank you for the comment.
Yeah, to kind of circle back on that too, the basin, all that the basin will do is, if we get storms that are too much, it will just spill out of that emergency overflow weir without damaging the basin as well too. If that helps ease any concerns, which is why there's also a berm above the overflow weir. It's not just the doesn't want to zoom in. So the weir will be, a foot lower than the top of the berm. So at least this way, if water does ever start to spill out, it won't blow out that berm and prevent future problems.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So is the commission comfortable with the plans as presented, with the exception of maybe some additional condition of approval regarding construction schedule to move forward on this, or are there additional concerns?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I'd like to point out two things. One, relative to the construction sequence, the commission might want to see a phased erosion control plan for the phase one being the road and the stormwater improvements as indicated. And that might be getting kind of away from what should be included in a condition of approval, if that is in fact something the commission is looking to see. And then two, I just wanted to point out the regrading of this swale. I guess it's west of the southern detention pond. I had originally requested that they look at that because there's some active erosion occurring. The new drainage on site should divert any sort of concentration of water. However, it's definitely still an erosion gully. Some of the commissioners walked down there during the site walk. I just wanted the commission to revisit that now that the stormwater basin has been revised to not divert water to that location. I just wanted to confirm that that's activity the commission is still looking to see happen. And I understand the soil scientist is present this evening. I might just ask him to speak briefly to the offsite wetland observed to the west of the site, dominated by Phragmites, as indicated in the wetland report.
Certainly can do that. This is George Logan, Marine Ecological Services. I'm a professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist. When I was out on the site, oh my goodness, back in August, I suppose, and I think that's what my report indicated, I walked along the access way for the road, which continues obviously. And I noticed that there was a patch of Phragmites that has more or less been developed within the roadway itself. It's probably from a compaction, past compaction. It's the hill is to the right as I'm going north, and then there's a more or less a flat area. So that has developed a little patch of Phragmites. And I think it's also pretty obvious if you look at some of the aerial photographs that are available online. It's not particularly big, and it's basically isolated, and it's off-site. It's along the roadway right-of-way, if you will.
So it is located offsite, so they were not required to delineate it. However, that would be the resource that I would be concerned could be impacted by this erosion feature.
If I may also, I should have indicated that. I'm not sure if I had a map that showed that. But
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, I can screen share the soils report real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I believe I'm going the wrong way.
You might be going the wrong way. There we go.
All right, so this is the aerial image which you indicated the offsite Phragmites patch.
Right.
So for those of you that went on the site walk, we parked around here, and this is where we accessed the upper portion of the site. So if you had continued along that right of way for Cherry Hill Road, that's where that offsite wetland area is.
Correct. And you can see that I used my handheld GPS at that time to just show the track that I was taking in investigating the swale. So you can see that the swale is further away. Right. It's in that area where the hand is, and it goes down the hill. So it's even water from there wouldn't get to the Phragmites patch. It would just keep going further down. So I think the Phragmites patch is probably safe from any construction sediment.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So do you think it would still be beneficial to go in and do that corrective grading in that area, or do you think it's more disturbance than?
What I would do, obviously it is disturbance. And so if any disturbance of those kinds of slopes, you probably have to have a wider swath of disturbance in order to even get to it and remove vegetation. What I would do, and I think the plan actually is doing it by default, is to make sure that water from that corner of the field, which is basically the source of the water to the swale, is not getting there anymore. So if that can be, if it's not already blocked by the plan, and I'll defer to James to tell us what's happening there. But if we can make sure that the water doesn't continue going down there, and you limit its watershed, then it will heal over, and it will not continue being an erosional problem.
Yeah, the proposed development is significantly reducing the watershed that is directed in that area.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. James, if you want to screen share again, you can pull up the site plan. Sorry, I hijacked.
This is Commissioner Boda. You said the watershed in that area is being reduced. Did you say what you meant to say? Can you elaborate on? Sorry?
So the watershed that is being directed at the swale is being reduced. So what's currently going to the swale, if you can see my cursor, would actually come all the way from up here and follow all the way down to here. However, now this is now roadway, so that's being captured. The house, driveways, those are all being captured. So we're significantly reducing the watershed that is being directed at this point, specifically the swale, because I know that's the area of concern. And the benefit to that would hopefully reduce any future erosion.
I mean, one thing that you could do also, that George Logan, for the record, during the construction of the lot that's the closest one, which is also next to the basin, one could take a look during field conditions. So it's always better to see what's happening in their field and see if there's something that can be done as far as just the minor grading at the backside of the lot in order for the water not to concentrate at that point, because it's really, really concentrated at a specific point. And that swale, even though you see it very much eroded there, which makes sense, it's on the steeper slope, the swale goes all the way, almost parallels the northern limit of the detention basin and going almost to the cul-de-sac. So there's sort of a feature there that it's really not shown on the plan because it's not particularly deep, but that's where the water is concentrating. So I think during development of that particular lot and actually detention basin too, it would be a pretty easy fix to make sure that the water doesn't concentrate, even though we're reducing the watershed, which I think should take care of it. So this will be a sort of a belt and suspenders kind of thing. of just a little fix if necessary, if it looks like the water will be concentrating at that point.
Are we prepared, Commissioner Bassman, are we prepared to move on this or wait?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that, to Jamie's point earlier, I think that conditions of approval are really for minor things that, like maybe a detail of a plant or a number of plants. I think that larger details like the contents of a construction sequence, I think that that's something that we ought to see and then make it, and then from that, we can make conditions of approval on something that's already in front of us. I think to just say there needs to be a construction sequence that includes the phasing for, the implementation of the erosion plan. That's too much. That's us designing the plan, and that's not, we are supposed to review a full and complete application. And at this time, we just, I think the applicant needs to cross the finish line. And I would also, since we have that moment, I think that will give the applicant another minute to look at that lower point and see if there's any additional feature that might need to be added, so that we don't have a pinch point there for which would potentially create some additional erosion. And then the other thing, just hearing that the management of the stormwater system is going to be turned over to a homeowners association of 11 units. I think that we've had those instances before, and I think that part of the plan needs to include how the homeowners association is being handed over management of the stormwater control system. And we've asked before of applicants that things like that needs to go in the homeowner documents that go with any association, because that's the kind of thing that if, these systems aren't maintained properly, they fail and then they cause big problems. And without clear notification that these systems are there, not like they don't need to go to the town to see an application that was passed. It needs to be part, if this is going to a homeowners association instead of to the town, the documentation needs to be really clear with people as they purchase the property that they are responsible for stormwater management as part of their community practice. So I think those two big things, not huge things, but I think that you've got time. You can go ahead and address those, and then we'll have something that we can fully vet.
Just to be clear, so I understand, are you actually looking for the finalized documents that would be going to each of these homeowners, or as part of the homeowners association?
No, so with a homeowners association, there's always a legal packet that they have to receive, and that's going to include, rules, regs. You're not going to do that for everything, but what a developer who's going to turn over control over the stormwater system and say, okay, these are during construction, right? We're going to look for reports on erosion control reports, but you're also going to have things like maintenance of the erosion control features during construction, but then post-construction, right? That's always part of a plan. Though that I would recommend that there is some kind of document that is for post-construction, and that must be inserted into the homeowners, that legal packet that they get with the homeowners association, because otherwise they're going to have no notification of this. And that's not good practice for people who are moving into the town to be unaware that they're responsible for that kind of, that's a serious commitment that they need to be aware of.
We do already have post-construction maintenance plan.
Right. So that should go into the homeowner's documents.
Okay. I just don't know how.
If they're going to be responsible, and I think I can be wrong about the association, but I think that we did something very similar with Riverwalk, and so Jamie, you may be able to look back at what was required to go with, because when it was an associate, it's different when it's the town. These are standard practices. When it's a homeowners association, you're looking at 11 units. That you really need to put people on notice that they're responsible for cleaning out those features and maintaining them.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I'm familiar with what you're talking about to an extent. I'm not really familiar with homeowner associations, and I think this one's a little bit different than Riverwalk in the sense that it's not all one parcel. But I can also reach out to town council to see if they have any guidance on how that is ultimately achieved, and relate back to the applicant. So it sounds like the commission would be looking for the applicant to grant an extension to the December 9th meeting. Is that correct?
Sounds like that's the course of action that would give the commission a complete set of information in which to act. And then we'd look at obviously any conditions of approval that were part and parcel of that. I guess the concentration effort between now and December is to make that construction schedule part of the document and clear, and to review the post as well as pre or during construction requirement for maintenance on the basins, such that there's enough detail in it that if it was added later on to a homeowners association, we would be comfortable that the maintenance effort would be prudent and ongoing.
Jamie Frederick.
Oh. Go ahead, Jamie.
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I was just going to add that I also had suggested to the applicant that the maintenance documents for the homeowner association include any proposed maintenance of the open space areas, particularly as the eastern open space area is currently kind of a meadow type state. If the intent is to keep it in that state, then the maintenance plan for doing so, such as mowing twice a year, whatever it be, should be presented. So that way, particularly as that is in the upland review area, that way that activity doesn't have to come back to the commission at a later time.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I have a question about the association versus, did I remember at the last meeting, did you talk about that land going to the town and now it's going to an association? Or did I misunderstand what you said last time?
So after speaking, especially with the town engineer who pretty much had a strong opinion, yep, the town wants no responsibility for the detention basins. This is our solution.
Okay, well, that's kind of an important fact, isn't it? That you consulted the town engineer and the town engineer wanted no part of it.
Wanted no part in the future. Yeah, to have for the city or the town to be responsible for future maintenance. Yes. Just want to reiterate real quick, and again, I'm good with just head nods. Complete construction sequence. Go over the maintenance plan and just make sure that there's enough detail in it, and that eventually what would end up being is it would become a condition of approval that the maintenance plan be added into the homeowner documents, because I don't know how else to do that. And then the only other comment that I did hear tonight was a phased S&E for the road. I just want to make sure that there's nothing else.
Commissioner Basserman, any open space?
Yeah. Well, that would be part of the maintenance plan. Yes.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. And we had some issue about the maintenance also of the access road last time. I didn't hear anything about that tonight. So how that's going to be like sealed off, how emergency vehicles will be able to get into that area when this is done, who will have rights to pass and repass on that? I'm not clear on that.
So I don't know how much of a wetlands issue this is.
Can I jump in? I don't know that's really our purview. I think that's a planning and zoning issue. I mean, unless it's going to change the road size and then the overall, I think that's a valid question. That sounds like a P&Z issue to me.
Now that I asked it, I think you're right. Sorry, I withdraw the question.
Well, to actually answer some parts of your question, the maintenance of it will fall on the homeowners association as well.
Ching. So I guess, do we have the extension, Mr. DeMille?
The applicant is present.
Yes, this is Bruno. Yep, that's fine for the extension.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and Wetland Agent. Bruno, can you follow up with that in writing? An email submission to me would be fine, just so that we have that for the file. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Begemon. Did we want to add anything about what was going to happen to that little swale in the?
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I wasn't sure if that made it on the list, and I was going to ask as well. Thank you.
Sure.
So yeah, I think taking a bit of a closer look at that, engineer and wetlands scientist perhaps, and whether there is a solution to prevent any additional erosion that might require less activity, might be something to consider given the revised site plan drainage.
Absolutely. All right,
thank you. See you in December.
See you in December.
Thank you very much.
Inland Wetland 210901, 56 Stony Creek Road. Installation of a fence around the wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I have a request that this item be tabled. They were supposed to meet with the state regarding the extent of the requirement yesterday. That did not happen. I think that they're currently in talks again about having the requirement waived, which might result in a different application. So ultimately the request is that this be tabled to the December 9th meeting.
Couldn't happen at a better time. Inland Wetland 211003.
Commissioner Boda, can we just take like a 3-minute break? I just need to refill my water.
Sure. Do we have a quorum? 1, 2, 3. Clarice, are you with us? Sandy, are you with us? Hang on, guys.
One more minute according to the time.
Thank you. All right, we ready to reconvene? All right, we reconvene the Inland Wetland meeting of November 4th. Next up, Inland Wetland 21-1003, 49 and 81 to 111, Commercial Parkway, construction of a last mile e-commerce delivery station.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. How are you? My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office on 147 Broad Street in Milford on behalf of FSI Acquisitions, LLC. As we told you last month, they are the contract purchaser. The properties at 49 and 81 through 111 Commercial Parkway. This is an application to conduct regulated activities for the purpose of constructing a distribution and e-commerce last mile facility. As we found out yesterday on the sidewalk in person, and as we've described before you on our plans and reports, there are no wetlands or water courses on the subject parcel. There is a narrow drainage swale that runs along the connector that a small portion of our site drains into. As we've told you, that nevertheless, we're taking the opportunity to make significant environmental improvements. The overall site is 21.5 acres. We're in the BLHR zone. Warehousing, distribution, e-commerce facilities are permitted subject to special exception approval. As we noted, this is the only zone where this use is permitted, and this is the only property in the zone. So this site has been specifically targeted for this use by the town. We are making significant improvements to stormwater quality, reducing the rates of runoff from the sites, reducing the total volume of runoff from the sites, and we're doing this by reducing impervious coverage, infiltrating a portion of our stormwater and complying with the MS4 requirements, and minimizing downstream flooding, actually minimizing any risk of downstream flooding. So we gave a very thorough presentation last month. We're going to give you essentially a redo of that this evening with our same team. Dennis Codier from BL Companies, Matt Davison from Davison Environmental, and to the extent you have more technical questions, Jeff Dewey, our professional engineer from BL Companies. So with that, give it to Dennis Codier.
Thank you, John. Good evening. My name is Dennis Codier, and can everybody hear me? Okay. Yep. All right. My name is Dennis Codier. I'm a senior project manager with BL Companies located at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. As Attorney Nuff had mentioned, the property is 21 and a half acres, bounded by Branford Connector to the west and Commercial Parkway to the east. And it is currently, has historically been a developed property, significantly covered by pavement and impervious. The coverage right now is at roughly 85.5%, and we plan to reduce that, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. The proposed facility is roughly 98,000 square foot footprint located over in here with a loading area, covered loading area with a canopy. On to the north end of the property is areas for van parking, where the vans would enter into the loading area, load up, and then exit the site via out onto Commercial Parkway. And then another parking location on the south side of the building, which is for the employees. And there is a loading area with access from Commercial Parkway. And when I say loading area, this is for the trailer trucks that are bringing packages that will be sorted before they are loaded onto the delivering vans. I will talk in a moment about the stormwater system, but the wetlands that are off-site, you can see the finger, which is a drainage ditch along the connector here to the southwest. And then just off the map and off the property is another area of wetlands as well. And I believe you noted all of these areas on your site walk yesterday that were staked out. To talk a little bit more specifically about the regulated activities, You can see to the north end of the property, which is the northwest corner, there is just under a tenth of an acre of activity within the upland review, which includes parking or paved area, some other graded area, and then that would have a combination of landscaping and then retaining walls as well, and some other walkways in support of EV equipment for charging of electric vehicles. At the southwest corner, you can see there is, again, pavement driveways to support the circulation of the vans, and there's a tiered retaining wall, terraced retaining wall located here. And then the dark green is the area that is not to be disturbed, providing additional buffer to the wetland area. And you'll note on the next plan, there is a discharge point in the upland review area for a stormwater management discharge location. Within the regulated area itself, we are proposing to reduce the amount of impervious coverage by nearly 35%. So we're going from almost 19,000 square feet to a little over 12,000 square feet in this area. The total activity is just under 3/4 of an acre. The stormwater management system primarily consists of 4 systems, if you will. The one to the south drains a portion of the van parking into a subsurface detention system that is then connected to the existing drainage system that enters into Commercial Parkway. And that is highlighted here in the bluish green. The central portion of the site highlighted in yellow, the system includes pavement for the van parking, the loading, what we call the line haul, where the trailer trucks come in, and then also the roof drainage of the canopy comes in and then enters into the surface detention basin, where that discharges over in this area just outside of the regulated area. And there's a proposed rain garden as well. Highlighted in green is another subsurface drainage system.
Dear, can you just, within the yellow, can you, I didn't see where you said the roof drainage connects. Can you show that again? I don't see it.
It connects, well, you can see there's a highlight all through here. So the flow from the roof comes down on the canopy, and then the roof leaders come down along columns and then enter into the system.
So this hashed line where your cursor is sort of on the parallel side to the building is like a raised structure, a canopy, you said?
This area, this is a canopy to protect the loading of the van area from the element.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, the green area, another subsurface system, and then in the purple or the magenta collects the runoff from this portion of the drive for the vans, and then has a discharge here. Overall, we are decreasing the flows from the site. And if you have any detailed questions related to that, Mr. Dewey, Jeff Dewey can answer those. I think that is at a high level, the overall program. And I think I can turn it back over to Attorney Nuff for any final comment.
Before you do that, Mr. Basserman, how are we achieving the reduction in impervious surface? Is it because of just the stormwater management structures?
Well, we Dennis Godair, the companies, we're reducing the impervious coverage because we don't need as much impervious coverage. But
if the site is basically 100% asphalt today,
correct?
Where's the reduction coming from?
It's a combination. If you go back to the existing site plan, you can see all of the pavement. There's no islands within the parking areas, but if you compare that to what we have here, we have much more green space within the islands, planting beds. There's more of a buffer area within the upland review area, so that's another location that we're reducing the impervious. So it's a combination of different items.
Okay. Now, Commissioner Bassman again, and speaking to the asphalt, when you tear up that asphalt, I heard yesterday at the site walk that that would be probably left on site for a bit, stockpiled. Do you have locations for where that asphalt is going to be stockpiled? The concern is that it not be stockpiled near the watercourse.
And for that, I will turn it to ask my colleague Jeff Dewey to respond.
Good evening, Jeff Dewey, BL Companies. Yes, on the erosion control plans, we have a series of stockpiles called out. We locate them as far away from the wetlands as practical. We don't specify which one is asphalt necessarily. We just call them out to be material stockpiles. We certainly could dedicate one to be a stockpile for pavement materials if the commission deemed that's appropriate.
The follow-up question, Commissioner Basserman, do you tear up the asphalt section by section? Do you do it all at once? What is the plan, and does the plan indicate?
Jeff Dewey with BL Companies. At this point, we have a phasing plan in our erosion control plan. We don't get that detailed to specify how much pavement to be removed in how much of a period of time. It's really a function of how the contractor would approach construction of the project. We would certainly meet with the contractor and recommend that he not remove all the pavement in one shot because we got to keep our areas stabilized. And we'd also, during the pre-construction meeting with the town, that would be something that we would discuss with the contractor and work out an amendable approach towards demolition as well as construction of the project.
Yeah, the comment is this is such a large site. I think that's got to be spelled out pretty specifically in the permit so that we don't have a situation where we have torn up a sizable portion without appropriate erosion controls.
And this is Dennis Godair, and Mr. Chairman, to your point, this will also require a general permit from Connecticut DEEP. So they will be reviewing those measures. We can talk through or walk you through a little bit more, the extent of what that entails if you're not familiar with it. But that will also be reviewed and need to be approved by the Connecticut DEEP.
Thanks, Dennis. If there's no other questions for Dennis or for Jeff, we're going to turn it over to Matt Davison.
I don't know. This is Commissioner Bass, but I don't know who the question best lies here, but I guess I am concerned. I believe what we heard in the presentation last month was that not all of the stormwater management is being retained regarding the first inch, and some of it is going directly into the stormwater system that is off-site. And I guess I'm curious, why aren't we retaining the first inch in the entire site?
This is Jeff Dewey with BL Companies. Basically, as you know from being out on the site naturally drains and the topography goes from high to low, from north to south. So we attempted to collect and store and treat the water quality volume for the entire site. However, on the southern portion of the site with the van egress lane is significantly lower than the rest of the site. And it did not leave us much real estate to perform the water quality volume storage. However, so what we do provide, and we do this site-wide, is it's a small drainage area, small portion of the exit driveway. The catch basins will have 4-foot sumps as well as hooded outlets, and they will discharge into a level spreader system, which will minimize any erosive velocities. So that we are providing some treatment level, and we don't anticipate a lot of issues with this being just the exit drive for the vans. But however, that is the main reason we didn't is this is it being the low portion of the site, and there really not being much real estate in this area to develop a detention basin.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. On that topic, can you also just briefly discuss the drainage on the east side of the building? Because that also does not go into the stormwater on-site retention or treatment train, I believe.
Jeff Dewey from BL Companies. Jamie, you are correct. The eastern portion of the roof, approximately 1/3 of the roof area, 2/3 of the roof to the west, and the entire canopy area all go into the surface detention basin, which is treated for water quality with 100% water quality volume retention and eventual infiltration. The 1/3 of the roof area to the east, we determined to just pipe it directly into the existing piping system. And basically our thought process was that roof water is considered to be relatively clean runoff water, so it would not need to be treated. And we were providing enough detention where we really didn't need to provide additional detention, because we are significantly reducing the peak rate of runoff as well as the volume of runoff to the site. And that included with the fact that we are also reducing the amount of impervious area. And additionally, on top of that, the fact that the current site doesn't have any stormwater management with regard to water quality or detention on site, that the amount of improvements we are making to the overall stormwater quality and quantity from the site greatly outweighs sending a little bit of the roof area untreated.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, to follow up on that, was that done because it could not be sent to the underground detention system in the parking lot, or simply because of the reasons that you just identified?
Jeff Dewey from BL. Jamie, the roof areas, certainly we could have got them into that detention system. Again, roof water is generally considered to be clean runoff water, much cleaner than pavement parking lot runoff. So considering we didn't need to provide additional detention, it was our engineering judgment to send that directly into the existing piping system and the eventual outfall over in the wetlands, as it is cleaner stormwater.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, just for state, the commission has had a past practice of requiring that retention of the first inch relative to the on-site improvements. I understand that you are providing the retention of the first inch volume. I think the concern would be the fact that there is no treatment. If the commission wants, I can request that the town engineer respond specifically to that and any comments he might have, so that the commission isn't finding themselves in a situation where they're setting precedents without identifying why they might be allowing something that they generally have not allowed in the past.
Commissioner, our regs don't, differentiate between clean water and untreated water. And it says first inch is going to be retained. So if we're going to deviate from that, I think we need a solid rationale.
This is Jeff Dewey from BL Companies. It is that is a good point. I've never seen it documented, but throughout my many stormwater management system designs, roof water is typically considered a clean water and does not typically require the water quality volume calculation. The water quality volume calculation is based on the first inch of runoff, which basically the theory behind it, and it's a good theory, is that the pollutants that are stored on paved areas, like your brake dust from your cars, a little bit of oil leaks, radiator fluid, and what have you, as it sits on the pavement, it gets collected in that first inch of runoff. that most of your pollutants are suspended in that first inch of runoff, and that's why we treat the first inch of runoff. Roof areas do not have brake dust and a little bit of oil and what have you that are associated with parking lots, and that's why typically we don't apply the water quality volume calculation to roof areas and require it to be treated necessarily. A lot of times we'll include it in the water quality volume calculation to be conservative and say all impervious surfaces. But here again, knowing that roof areas do not have vehicular parking and the associated pollutants, we don't always necessarily run them through a treatment train system.
Mr. Chair, I'm not a professional engineer. Jeff is, of course, but I have been doing this a long time. I've seen very few instances where roof water is actually treated. I think this is candidly unusual that we're treating 2/3 of that roof area as compared to the entirety of it. Oftentimes it is immediately discharged off the site because it's deemed to be clean water, and as Jeff's indicated, it's not being affected by any vehicular traffic of any kind. I'm looking at 7.6A of your regulations, and there's a reference to groundwater recharge volume, and I think that's really sort of what, and the water quality volume. And I think what you're getting at is stormwater that is hitting pavement that is subject to debris or other substances coming off of the cars and vans. As little as that is, given modern cars.
Attorney Depp, I certainly understand the differentiation between surface particulates and the roof and the water associated with that. I guess my concern is what our regulations say and allow, what we have done in the past, and to be clear on that when we consider this application. So, Jamie, let me ask you this. What do our regs say regarding that paragraph on the first inch?
Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. It says demonstration that the project has been designed at minimum in accordance with the guidance manual. In accordance with guidance and recommendations set forth in the 2002 Connecticut Deep Soil Erosion and Sediment Control Manual as updated, and the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual as updated, with particular attention to Chapter 7 applying to water quality volume and groundwater recharge volume. Recommendations to all sites or demonstrate why this is not feasible or prudent. Treatment of the first inch is to be by retention and infiltration on site unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. And I believe that the Deep Storm Water Quality Manual does reference roof runoff. And I do understand that roof runoff and pavement runoff generally have a greatly different water quality issue. But I do believe that area is included. I can double check. And like I said, if the commission would like, I can ask for the town engineer's comments on the topic for part of the consideration.
I guess one other question then is, has our practice in the past been to include the roof runoff in our assessment and calculation of the first inch?
Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. Generally, yeah, the runoff would be the water quality volume, which is based off of the impervious areas, which includes the roof.
So I guess where I sit, listening to what the regulations say, past practice, et cetera, is while we have included it clearly in the past, there does seem to be in the regulations the ability to waive a certain condition as long as it is justified, as long as we have a rationale to do that. to the extent that the town engineer can weigh in on this and provide some additional guidance, that would be helpful. I don't know where the other commissioners are on the differentiation between clean roof water runoff and surface runoff and our regulations. And am I more concerned than I need to be at this particular aspect?
This is Commissioner Boda. I don't think you're more concerned than you need to be. I think it's certainly worth getting some additional guidance from our own town staff. And right now I'm just taking a peek at Chapter 7 of the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. And I think, it's been our past practice to really look at the site as a whole and look to capture that first inch, one for pollutants, but we're also thinking about overall volume and peak rate for those reasons. So I don't think it's an inappropriate question. And I think we're in the process of getting to know this application. It's a fair question for us to consider and get additional guidance from rather.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So based off of that, I would like the applicant to provide clarification if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that the volume overall that would include is being retained on site. It's just that the particular volume from that area isn't necessarily being retained on site. Would that be an accurate assessment or statement? Because you're reducing the overall, are you retaining that first flush on site, just maybe not the first flush from the areas?
Jeff Dewey from BL. I'm sorry, Jamie, I'm really not 100% sure what you're trying to say. Sure. I'm trying to grasp it. So we are retaining 100% of the water quality volume, which is the 1 inch, which is the first flush. We are not retaining the 1 inch from that portion of roof. Because here again, we, as a design engineer, we consider that clean runoff water that does not require treatment. And I know the DEP water quality manual is very vague. It doesn't say roof areas are included. It doesn't say roof areas are not included. So it doesn't clearly give us a path and a definitive response to this.
It's Commissioner Basserman. I guess if it's only a portion of the roof, is the other portion of the roof not clean? And if it's clean, why not treat it the same?
Jeff Dewey from BL. Reason being, sir, is the western portion of the roof is collected into a drainage system that was directed into the detention basin. So it just made sense to do so. The small eastern portion of the roof, because remember, it's only a third of the building roof area.
Right.
Because it's on the east side, could not be readily sent to the surface stormwater management basin. So it could have been, we could have directed it into the dark green subsurface management system. But here again, because it was the cleaner water, we made the engineering judgment call that we didn't think that was necessary. That was the only real reasoning behind it.
But there is an engineering solution to the eastern roof to put it into that green structure.
Yes, sir. We could do so.
Thank you.
This is Dennis Gaudier from BL Companies. If I may add to that conversation, and not to belabor the point, but the town engineer had reviewed the application and issued comments, and specifically related to stormwater. And I have a portion of that up on my screen. And the comment is water quality volumes. It's not even a comment as much as a statement of acknowledging that we are addressing water quality volumes, and they're provided through above and below ground retention systems, and it goes on, and it's basically a statement. So it was obviously reviewed, and no issue seems to have been taken with how we were addressing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Baskin. Jamie, were you looking at the town engineer for something other than that comment?
I might just ask him to clarify specifically whether that he reviewed the aspect that part of the roof is not being sent to any sort of on-site retention or treatment, just to confirm. And if he's satisfied, then I can bring that back to the commission. I think the easiest thing is just get an answer from the town engineer. I don't know that we need to drag it out with not having additional information at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, we're happy to follow up with the town engineer. I'm confident that we can demonstrate compliance with your regulations. Your regulations say where possible and where feasible, and the DEP stormwater manual is guidelines. It is not mandatory. So, I'm very confident that we can demonstrate in December that we will comply with all applicable manuals and provisions with regard to stormwater. And I think candidly, we meet or exceed any of those requirements, and we're happy to follow up with the town engineer and provide any other documentation necessary to demonstrate compliance with the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual. I think it would be beneficial to have Matt Davison give his review of the stormwater system as well, and wetland impacts, because again, I think those impacts are positive. So Matt, if you can briefly address the commission.
Thanks, John. I'm sure I'll try to keep it brief with the understanding of the fact that the wetlands are essentially created and off-site. I did give a presentation about the wetlands at the last meeting. So as was discussed, the wetland resources are essentially two roadside swales, one that's located off the northwest corner of the site, and then another swale that's located off the southwest corner of the site. These swales were created. These swales, in terms of wetland functions, provide water quality functions at a high level, as would be anticipated for a feature that was created to capture and handle stormwater, densely vegetated, not really slow retention times, but the gradient's not super fast in there. So the water's generally moving slow through those wetlands. The only potential impact to those wetlands would be temporary wetland impacts or temporary impacts during construction, which I honestly don't foresee given the location of the work as it relates to the location of wetlands. We are introducing a discharge point to the wetlands. However, the stormwater that we discharge towards those wetlands will receive primary treatment through the basin there. The existing upland review area on the site, it has been for the most part entirely disturbed, whether it's bituminous, remnant bituminous or bituminous, or whether it's just a graded fill slope. For anyone who's on the sidewalk, you can see there's kind of bermed up in the back there. There's an Eversource distribution line that runs through there, and then it drops down into the swale. But all of that area has been manipulated at some point in time. And the proposed development would reduce impervious coverage within the upland review areas. With respect to stormwater, it's difficult for a wetland scientist to get into the nitty gritties of stormwater management. There's a lot of calculations and things that are, really require an engineering brain to digest. There's a lot of design parameters, that deep outlines that really must be met if you want to consider something a certain as providing a certain treatment. So as was, discussed during the last meeting, the infiltration rates of the soils, separation of groundwater, all these things, which of course are being vetted out or have been vetted out and found to, the design has been found to be suitable. From a really high level with stormwater, I think what I'll say as a wetland scientist is I would always strive for any raw land development to provide primary treatment for all stormwater. Primary treatment being stormwater basins, stormwater wetlands, above ground infiltration is the standard for primary treatment. And more recently, it's been acceptable that underground infiltration can be considered primary treatment. The manual acknowledges that innovations that were once considered secondary, which would be underground infiltration, be considered primary treatment if they provide the same treatment as accepted primary treatment methods. In the underground treatment systems, through testing from the University of New Hampshire, have been found, especially with structures like what is being proposed, that what they call an isolator row, as well as a treatment train. The underground treatment measures provide similar treatment to acknowledged primary treatment measures. Where I'm going with this is that for redevelopments, it's from a wetland science standpoint, it's typically acceptable. Any redevelopment, you want to see enhancements to stormwater, and it's often acceptable on redevelopments to have those enhancements be solely secondary treatment structures or Technic units, some of these other kind of structural controls that don't provide the same treatment as primary treatment. But you're often limited by virtue of the fact that there was already development there and you don't have the same room as you would on a raw land development. In this particular case, I do think that the applicant has done an admirable job in that the vast majority of the stormwater treatment on the site will receive primary treatment, which is unusual for a redevelopment. Clearly, the questions that are being asked are important questions, and I think there's some details that need to be worked out. But again, from a very high level, I think it's admirable that, again, the vast majority of the treatment will receive, or the vast majority of the stormwater discharge will receive what can be considered from the Stormwater Quality Manual primary treatment. So again, with just the details being worked out, I think that this would represent an enhancement over what's there now, and certainly over what could have been there if it was just a series of structural controls that were being proposed, like for Technics units and catch basins, et cetera. So I would, give credit for that. And that's really all I have to say.
Commissioner Baxter, thank you. I have one, concern, and you touched on it, and that is the engineering aspect of this. And I guess this is directed to staff. Jamie, are you confident that the calculations that were used for stormwater management is something that between you and town's engineering, et cetera, you're comfortable in being able to review it and sign off on it? Or do we need help in that regard?
Jamie, before you, Jamie, I apologize for interrupting, but we've had our own separate exchange. I mean, we would be happy to accept a condition of approval of sending that other third of the roof into the green underground detention area. And obviously that would have to be resized to some extent. And then also we can add, I think Jeff can describe better than I can what we can do in that area of the magenta.
Yes, John. Jeff Dewey from BL Companies. As we mentioned, we certainly could direct that eastern portion of the roof into the green subsurface detention system. And as Matt pointed out, and I failed to do so, these are high-tech systems, which are primary treatment systems, which are considered the high level and very dependable long-term, as well as high quality functional treatment, as well as detention facilities. So we have gone over and above with the stormwater management system of the site in the design. And basically we're trying to make this so it's, when you look at it, you can see the level of stormwater management and not have to really dig into the details and spend a lot of time wondering if it's sufficient, because it's very much an over-designed redevelopment project. That said, again, I'll go back to what I was starting to say before I got on my soapbox. I apologize. So we could certainly take that portion of the roof area and send it into the green infiltration system, expand that infiltration system to give it a little more capacity for the additional roof runoff going into it, as well as the magenta area of the driveway. We could put in a small infiltration system down there as well to provide treatment. We really don't need any more detention on site, but innate infiltration systems will provide some level of detention, but it certainly would address the water quality concerns for the driveway as well.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Boda. I was just, Mr. Davison started talking and we kind of went back to the stormwater, and I was hoping, Mr. Davison, you could talk a little bit about the plantings that are intended for the rain garden. If we could get maybe just a little bit more detail. And then within the basin, the stormwater basin, if that is, if there are plantings in there, if it's a low grass, what the intention is there.
You know, I don't have that information in front of me, actually. The planting plan, I know I reviewed. I did not take part in the design of it, but my recollection was that I was happy with it when I did review it.
This is Jeff Dewey from BL Companies. If it's fine, I could speak to what the actual nature of the plantings are, if that's okay.
As an engineer, you're going to talk about the plants?
Well,
if
you want to say what they are, I'll comment live here. I'll do a live.
I can pull up the landscape plan if that would be helpful.
I have the landscape plan right here. I'll pull it up. The plantings, and I'm a landscape architect registered here in the state of Connecticut, and that can certainly add input as well. The planting is a conservation. It's more of a native mix of seed lawn mixes, and then also wet seed mix. I can pull up the exact mixture. It's something we use all the time for these, and it's very suitable for these conditions. Native planting to help support, habitat for bees or insects as well. There is, it's really more of a lawn area that's a swale with hardwood deciduous trees planted in there. We can certainly enhance that. There is some areas of some woody shrubs to help with water quality before it does enter into any basins. That's sort of the overview and highlights.
I think that's good. I would encourage, I like the fact that it's emergent vegetation. I would be less, I wouldn't want to see invasives planted, but in terms of everything being native, you're not looking at you're not looking at enhancing wildlife habitat in this particular setting. For me, what's paramount is water quality treatment. So for me, the fact that it's emergent vegetation is the most important because it's going to provide the best stormwater treatment. So I'm fine with those plantings.
And then, thank you for that. This is Commissioner Boda again. Can you then just clarify for the outfall, both from that lower detention basin and then the basin on, I think that's the south. It's the far right hand of the screen. It was in the magenta earlier. Can you, so both of those places, and I think there was one maybe further, I guess up on the screen from the magenta one. There was a third discharge point there, right?
The systems up here all go into this detention area and then stay underground to the existing pipe systems. So Jeff, it was just this discharge, and then there's a discharge over here.
Yeah, so those discharge points, the one from the basin, is that heading then toward the wetland? And then the one that was in magenta, where is that? Is that also heading toward the wetland? I can't, from this drawing and from the last drawing, it just sort of ends. And don't have a sense of once it goes at that flared end, where does it go?
This is Jeff Dewey from BL. You are entirely correct. They will drain into the wetlands. What we have is after the outlet, they go into what's called a level spreader, which encourages to put the flow pattern from a point discharge back into a sheet flow pattern. So it'll be a non-erosive velocity, but they will drain into the wetlands.
As a project team, I'm sorry, Matt Davidson again for the record. As a project team, we did discuss that outfall location, and I do like where it's situated. I think that situating it above the tip of the wetland maximizes the potential for that wetland to provide additional stormwater treatment. I mean, it'll be clean water coming out of there, but introducing it at the tip and then allowing it to continue to filter down through that system is better than releasing it down at the very bottom end of that swale where it's receiving less treatment. The swale is essentially another stormwater feature. It picks up most of the hydrology in that swale is driven from runoff directly from the connector.
Yeah. So this Commissioner Bowden, I think that's helpful. And I think just, going back, I appreciate the concession about putting the remainder of the roof, because I think, we were talking about pollutants, but I think in addition to that, we think about water temperature as well, and making sure to treat that water so that whether within that first flush is about particulates, but it also tends to be about temperature. And thinking about a large roof like that getting very hot in the summer, I think that makes sense, especially if then ultimately the discharge makes its way to the wetland. It's got time to cool down. We don't want to deoxygenate whatever is there because all of a sudden we've spiked the temperature, which is very typical what happens with a summer storm.
Anything else, Commission?
Mr. Chairman, as I noted, we would be more than happy to accept a condition of approval that, the changes that we're proposing this evening be approved by your town engineer. So, candidly, we'd love to, get to a vote this evening if that's possible. I think that, Jeff and Dennis and Matt have done a great job in terms of describing the ways in which we exceed the requirements, and particularly for a redevelopment site. I think you can see the level of care and diligence and thoroughness the team has put into this application. Listen, I think at this point we're sort of not even dotting I's. It's even less than that, and we're happy to work with your town engineer to finalize the last few details of the plan.
Yeah, I guess it's better our practice, however, that when we vote to approve or not a plan, we have the complete set of documents and in front of us. And as it exists today, we couldn't look at a plan today and see that. And I guess it might get to what Commissioner Boda mentioned on a previous application, which is at what point is a condition approval a minor add-on to a plan as opposed to an integral part of the plan. And I think what we've talked about with the roof and the stormwater treatment, et cetera, and this resizing of the green area, et cetera, to me that starts to say we need a different plan than maybe the one that we have in front of us to vote.
No, right. I understand about the previous application, and I would say that was apples and oranges. I mean, if you don't have a plan for the actual construction of the project or a maintenance plan, yes, those are absolutely fundamental issues. I think in terms of whether the isolator rows are 20 feet long or 30 feet long, I think that's and frankly, none of us, unless you're a professional engineer, have the ability to determine whether the sizing of those isolated rows are sufficient for the amount of that 1/3 of the roof area. So, but I think that the practical application, the practical effect is the same. as what is being proposed for the other 2/3. So, I don't know. I'm sure Matt could give you more in terms of how those isolated rows are providing primary treatment. But that's the practical effect of adding that, the other third of the roof, to be treated by by that underground infiltration.
Well, I guess if the commission feels that it's appropriate to deal with it go ahead, Commissioner Boda.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I think, Mr. Neff, you advocate for your clients very well. And, at this point, I'm amenable to this application. I think it would be slightly premature. I'm not prepared to make a vote on it this evening. I do think that, especially with a project this large, we like to have the town staff has done a really excellent job of providing us with a summary, which the things that we've discussed, the things that we've asked for, the things that have come back, enumerating the possible conditions that we might want to consider. And without evening, we've got a lot. I think the application is positioned very well. I think we just need to wrap it up. And I think that we could probably do that next month.
Okay. All right. Any other questions in the meantime?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yep. You too.
Thanks.
Appreciate, by the way, the presentation. I think all of the speakers tonight did a great job of explaining a very good project for Branford, and we look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Thank you. Have a great night. Let's see. Jurisdictional ruling request, 93 Bradley Street, maintenance of Path Road. Jamie, you want to frame this for us?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So there's actually been a request. So first of all, this jurisdictional ruling request was submitted in response to a notice of violation that was issued that the commission briefly reviewed at the last meeting. It was requested that they submit a jurisdictional ruling request, which they have done. I've received some correspondence from abutting property owners, and I think that there's a bit of there's definitely private property concerns regarding where the activity is. So in respect to trying to reflect that in the response to the jurisdictional ruling request, the council has requested that this be continued to the December 9th meeting. I told them that I would be in support of that since I had just received materials today from one of the abutting property owners and was not going to be able to review them before the meeting. However, I did say we will not be continuing this. It needs to happen in December. So I would expect to discuss this at the December 9th meeting.
Okay. Enforcements, notice of violation, Island View Village condominium, drainage maintenance required.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So we received the application that was the direction for that notice of violation. This item was on the agenda before we received the application and did not get taken off. So I don't think there's anything new to say.
Notice of violation 122.5C Chestnut Street.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This item was before the commission, and it was requested that a planting plan be developed for the area along the watercourse bank with thoughts to provide shading functions and help prevent invasive species. When I sent the follow-up letter to the property owner that did the activity, I also sent it to DOT because that activity appears to be within the state right-of-way. There's been some changing in staff at DOT, so I have been directed to hold off until I can get direction from whoever would be in charge of reviewing any plantings within the DOT right of way. So I plan on following up with them again to get an update on whether or not the state's going to have any restrictions on what can go in that area. I don't really foresee there being any additional impacts. But if there is to be any plantings, ideally they would go in the spring before invasives have a chance to flourish.
And I assume we'd have no wetland that's in jeopardy at the moment.
Correct, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I don't see any current issues by postponing it.
Notice of violation 93 Bradley Street, clearing of vegetation and the placement of crushed stone.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that is the notice of violation per the jurisdictional ruling request. So I'll also table that to December 9th.
Notice of violation 41 Brader Road, erosion control maintenance regarding inland wetland 20.12.01, a subdivision in inland wetland 20.08.07, lot 4.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, this site has had a couple of erosion control maintenance issues, and I felt that I was not really being, what I was requesting was not being responded to in a timely fashion. The erosion controls ended up overtopping, and so there was some turbid water going over the top of the silt fence through the wetland area and ultimately down to the water course at the end of the street. So I issued the notice of violation to make sure that the erosion controls were repaired prior to the next rain event. So if the commission would like, I can share some pictures real quick. There was a very minor amount of material going out into the street through the anti-tracking pad, but the point of concern was the fact that they hadn't properly repaired their silt fence. So the material, as you can see here, has built up towards the top of the silt fence, and the silt fence is pushed over, so it allowed for runoff from the site to go over the silt fence and into the wetland area. And it went through the wetland area out into the street and to the water course down the end of the street. There's no visible accumulation really. However, obviously this is a violation of the permit term, so that's why I issued the notice of violation. That silt fence has been repaired, and I am continuing to monitor the site. I don't think there's any further action required by the commission.
Okay. Into other business, inland wetland 20.08.05, 81 Todd's Hill Road, permit modification request, modification to stormwater management.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, we do have the property owner present. He's looks like been on the call. So this is one of the 99 Todd's Hill subdivision lots. The concern is regarding the current stormwater management location. It's a rain garden, has not been planted yet. However, the concern is the fact that it is not infiltrating. So it's just standing water. So the property owner has a revised plan that he would like to propose. While I'm pulling up the plan, if he would like to provide a couple of comments, I'll also pull up his letter requesting the modification.
Yep, Mike Frieda, 81 Todd's Hill Road. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I purchased this property back in April from the Vigliotti family. Everything's been great with the house so far, except for the amount of stress that this particular swale, which if Jamie can pull up a photo for us, has given to my family. We have a swale smack dab in the middle of our backyard. You always dream of having possibly an in-ground pool in your yard, but not an in-ground pool of this nature. It doesn't drain. It actually sits like this for 3 or 4 days after a rainstorm. It's frankly a safety hazard for me and my family. I have a 2-year-old daughter and a newborn on the way in January. Not something that I want to have to deal with on a daily basis, wondering if my children are going to run into this and possibly something more serious can happen. So what I'm proposing is just to move this about 20 to 30 feet to the left towards the back of the lot. There is an existing curtain drain that flows out, which Jamie can probably show you in the map. Like I said, not anything major we're looking to do. We're just trying to get this out of the middle of our yard and off to the side where it doesn't disrupt our daily activities as a family. Thank you.
And Jamie, just highlight where the wetland is, if there is.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So Todd's Hill, which is at the bottom of the page, and then behind the house there is an existing footing drain, and this is the current rain garden location. The wetland is located on the west side of the site, pretty close to where the footing drain outlets. So what they're proposing to do is to move the rain garden back towards where the footing drain outlets and have an under drain that also discharges at an energy dissipator. And they have provided detail for the rain garden with the under drain and also a detail for the energy dissipator. So my question for the commission is that it okay for me to approve the revised rain garden location as a modification to the single family residential house development permit? The activity is pretty close to the wetland. It is on the opposite side of the footing drain. It is concentrating the stormwater discharge a bit more than what was originally approved. But I know the commission was originally concerned when this process started with ponding water on properties as is the issue. I did talk with the engineer for the project briefly. I do think there's a bit of modification / additional information needed before it's approved. But I think that as long as I get that information, it could possibly be a modification of the approval. My main concern is the elevation of the under drain relative to the elevation of the energy dissipator. There might have to be a little bit of tweaking regarding that or changes in some of the information. But also this footing drain elevation is based on what was proposed and has not actually been picked up in the field. So having that information may help document whether or not the proposed location is feasible as proposed or if it needs minor modification.
Is Commissioner Basserman, and because it's a modification to an existing permit, it can't be agent approval?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So based on the way the subdivision was approved and the way the individual lots were approved, this was an agent approval. However, I'm bringing it to the commission to just get confirmation as to whether or not you're okay with me doing this as a modification to that approval I've already issued once I have the information that I need to confirm that it's not going to back up and actually fill the rain garden, because the activity is so close to the wetland and it is adding the direct discharge going to that area adjacent to the wetland. Rather than.
But you did say that this was an agent approval for the lot?
Correct.
Okay.
So
I think from my standpoint, if we get the additional information, you're okay with it. It seems like this cannot continue to exist as the current situation, needs to be corrected, and this appears to be an appropriate solution. Anybody else feel different? You got what you need, Jamie? Or do you need a vote? What do you need?
No, but no one said anything all over where head nods and I couldn't see everyone. So I'm assuming since no one said otherwise, they're good. So
does anyone feel otherwise?
No, I do not feel otherwise.
Hearing silence, you're okay. All right.
All right. So I will be in touch with the property owner and with the project engineer to get to a final resolution.
Next up, our 22 meeting schedule, which was part of the package. Anybody feel differently about the schedule as proposed? I think there is lots of work to do, and we're trying to hold the one meeting a month.
We do have a draft agenda with 2 meetings a month available if the commission wants to look at it.
No. Just this commissioner, but two things. One, just wanted to make sure that this calendar was checked, major holidays. I'm assuming that it was, but just asking. Am I frozen again?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had Abby check for holidays when she put it together.
Okay.
You need a vote on this?
And then two, I'm going to turn my camera off. That might help.
I think we lost you, Suzanne.
Oh, no, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but there's an echo.
Oh, I don't know why. I this might be it for me because I'm having internet issues, but I would very much not be in favor of 2 meetings a month because it seems like a good idea. And then what ends up happening is that the length of the one meeting ends up becoming the length of both meetings. Having 2 meetings that make each meeting shorter, it just makes for 2 really long meetings.
So I agree. We're going to try to hold a 1 meeting a month. And when does the executive order end, Jamie?
You mean regarding remote meetings?
Remote, yeah.
So it's actually a statute, but I believe it ends in April of 2022.
And what do we face as a decision post-April? Can we continue to do remote meetings, or are we required now to be in person?
Unless there's new regulations put forward, then that would be the end of remote meetings. It's my understanding.
As a choice.
Right.
So are we, and I guess the other thing is we're moving to the firehouse for in-person.
Correct. Yes. So if you look at the meeting schedule for 2022, it does indicate the firehouse. It'll make it easier for BCTV to record, and the meeting room is generally already set up. So I think it's easier for everyone.
And you don't need an individual vote on the meeting schedule?
We do need a vote on the meeting schedule. So if somebody can make a motion, we can then file it down in the town clerk's office and make it official that we will not be regularly meeting twice a month.
Mr. Basserman, I'd make a motion that the 2022 meeting schedule as part of the documents for the meeting of November 4th, 2021 be approved.
Commissioner Papantonis, the second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Everybody? Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Inland Wetland 141102, Phase 1, and Inland Wetland 170705. What did I say? Phase 1? Phase 1 and Inland Wetland 170705, Phase 2. 250 North Main Street monitoring port status. We're going to table that to the December 9th meeting because you didn't get it, or you're not happy with it, or what?
I've been in correspondence with the permit holders team, and they've been responsive. They've been working on it. They just don't have the final documentation. They've been working on the invasive species removal. They're waiting for that to be completed before having the soil scientist come back out and do the recount of the plantings in the mitigation area. So I do expect to have meaningful materials for discussion at the December 9th meeting. I also talked with them about the erosion control or the erosion repair. It's within the existing approved areas of disturbance. The permit is still active. Same activity that was originally proposed, just correcting it. So I have gone ahead and authorized for that activity to occur so that they were not held up. So they will be present at the December 9th meeting to answer any questions the commission has and provide a report.
Thank you. D, update on regulation fee subcommittee. The regulation fee subcommittee has imploded with Eric Totalhunger being part of the commission. And I guess I will prepare a very brief report for the December meeting on whatever it is that we agreed to at the time of disbanding. And then the full commission can decide whether to proceed or take a different course of action. Agent approvals, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, in the wetland agent, IW number 211004-159 Cherry Hill Road, installation of fence and patio. Commission was made aware of that project and was okay with agent approval. Same with the following two, IW number 211001-18 Brooks Hill Road and residential septic system replacement. They modified the limits of disturbance slightly to decrease the overall limits of disturbance. IW number 211002-61 Flax Mill Road also came before the commission. I did have them, as after I went out to the site, I did request that they have a soil scientist go out and confirm the wetland location was where we were assuming it to be, and it was in fact in that location, and I proceeded to approve that administratively after some revisions to the plans. Spoiler alert, Commissioner Rose has resigned from the commission, in case you didn't pick up on that earlier. And then we did receive correspondence from a resident regarding a site that has an inland wetland approval. The site is not currently in compliance with their site plan. They put the footing drain in a different location than was approved, which on some sites may not be a huge issue, but on this site was certainly not something that can move forward. So I've advised the contractor that he needs to put it on and move it to the location that was approved. So I will follow up with him, and if it's not moved in a timely manner, then I will follow up with some sort of enforcement letter to ensure that it happens in a timely manner.
Okay. We covered the
letter is available in the Dropbox if commissioners want to take a look at it.
We covered the agenda for November 4th. Any other comments from the commission?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second.
Second it.
Yeah, right. Good night, folks. Thank you for hanging in. It's 10:05.
All right.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.